thank everybody for being here, especially the organizers, and Dr. Craig and Kona for coming all the way from America to help us understand what is going on in theology. And especially Dr. Craig for quoting me, especially an article I wrote 10 years ago in Afrikaans. I don't know who translated it for you, but I definitely do not regard God as nature. I agree with that eminent scholar Paul Tillich that God is the ground of all being. And my translation of Psalm 23 was to give expression to that view of God, which is much wider than a personal God above the skies, putting the strings of our earthly events. It's also nice to be back at my alma mater. I remember as a student when the Blue Bulls, that time of Northern Transvaal, won, it was regarded as a very special proof of God's existence. Like I said, there are developments in viewing God, and there's a very good book written by Karen Armstrong on the history of God, which I think should be good reading for everyone. She shows that even in the Bible itself, there is development in thinking about God. I would like to discuss the question not of how we should, because I don't think there's a final answer to reading any text, how we should read this text, but how we could understand the new narratives, New Testament narratives in a relevant and a responsible manner. And in short, my answer is not literally. As myth. Keeping within the parameters of scientific discourse, that the result of this analysis should be in principle open for dissent, for modification or alteration. And therefore, I'm going to say something about two types of discourse which the Greeks distinguished. They called it Mythos and Logos. I will then supply a definition of myth, and supply a rationale for why resurrection stories in general may be classified as myths. Finally, I will interpret the appearance of Jesus to Bhutan and 12 as such a myth. As a child, I remember one day we had a terrible storm, and scared of the thunder, I asked my grandmother what this noise was. Without blinking an eye, she responded, "The voice of God," quoting Psalm 29. Of course, my next question was, what does God say? And she started with a list of social evils. People should stop doing crime. The miniskirts young girls wear is really an abomination. Can you believe it? And children should obey their parents. And so on and so on and so forth. And her view of thunder showed all the elements of mythos, which is a story explaining this reality in terms of another supernatural reality. And this gave us some sort of meaning in life. To think that somehow there is justice in God's control of events. And Logos, of course, is the exact opposite. It explains phenomena in terms of this reality. Later I would learn that thunder is caused by lightning, which causes air to hit and compress and expand, causing this noise. But personally, I don't think that the one discourse is better than the other. But I do think it's very dangerous to call a mythos a logos. And the history of Christianity is unfortunately filled with this type of reasoning. A myth can therefore be defined as a story created in response to the chaos of our inner or outer worlds by referring it to another ultimate reality. In ancient times, myths are solidly grounded in the picture of a world with three stories, to which Saki so eloquently referred, and which, as far as I'm concerned, is not valid anymore. This three-story world vision. This is not how we view reality. This view of the cosmos itself generated stories and characters. communicate with divine beings in heaven, we need messengers, angels, dreams, or divine procedures. And possessed by a divine being, one can also produce ecstatic or inspired speech. Below the earth, we have Hades or Tartarus, where the souls of dead congregate and where sinners are punished. Demons originating from there may possess you, make you sick, or tempt you. Heroes in antiquity were special people who were connected to all three realms of the universe. A divine being is his father, an earthly woman his mother. He would do miracles, be killed, go down to Hades, and be resurrected and given a new body, similar to that of the stars, and ascend into the third story, into heaven. And sometimes myth would have a historical core. When Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44, before our common era, Halley's Comet appeared in the sky. And immediately Caesar Augustus issued a coin with Halley's Comet on it, implying that is the spirit of Julius Caesar ascending to heaven. And in this way, calling himself the Son of God, creating political propaganda. Myths are also open for addition, rewriting, and reinterpretation, due to a changing environment and therefore tolerate inconsistencies and contradictions. Myths are contagious and circular. There is, for example, you cannot disagree with it. Should women obey men? Of course. There is a story about it. God created Adam first, and Eve as his helpmate, and therefore women should obey him. I hope you perfectly understand the circularity of the argument. Patriarchal society generates a creation myth, which in turn underpins by patriarchal society. It may also be argued that Jesus developed into a typical mythological character, covering all three stories of the universe. Luke and Matthew supplies Jesus with a miraculous birth, not so Mark and John. He dies violently, just like each and every god, forming the core of the so-called mystery cults. He descends into Hades or Tartarus, Acts 2 Peter 3. He is resurrected, appears to some special followers, who become leaders in the new cult, and ascends to heaven, from which he would return to judge the living and the dead. And Stephen even sees the heaven opening with Jesus sitting at the right hand of God. And this is the three-story universe. And of course, from around the 2nd century of our common era, Christians started to claim that what happened to Jesus was historical truth. But what happened to the pagan gods perverted imitation. Exasperated Celsus in the late 2nd century declared, "Are our pagan beliefs to be accounted myths, and theirs believed? What reasons do the Christians give for the distinctiveness of their own beliefs? In truth, there is nothing at all unusual about what the Christians believe." To which Tertullian responded, "The devil inspired them to mimic earlier in history what would come later." The historical core of the resurrection myth may have been, as various researchers like Gary Wideman, Peter's vision of Jesus as recorded by Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. Unfortunately, the list of resurrection appearances here does not appear in the Gospels. It is possible to view the resurrection as a developing story. Randall Hallam's argued that on the third day, according to the scriptures, was added on the basis of Hosea 6:1-2, quoted out of context. The story of Joseph of Arimathea was added later. He was assigned a grave, again according to Randall Hallam's, with the rich in his death, quoting Isaiah 59:3. And so we can go on and show how the story grows. The early Christians, having been regarded as a group within Judaism, picked up more and more quarrels with the Jews. So Matthew has a new story of Jews putting God at the tomb and bribing them to say Jesus' body was stolen. Still later, some Christians talk about the resurrection of Jesus as an event where your body rots, but your soul soars upwards. They had to be corrected by portraying the resurrected Jesus as eating, drinking, and allowing himself to be touched. The only eyewitness of a resurrected Jesus in the New Testament is Paul himself, who describes his Damascus experience in various places, but mainly to argue for his apostolic authority as on par with Peter and James and the other apostles. They fought a lot, you see, good church people. And so different communities arise. The scriptures of Jewish Christians, like the Epistle of James, has nothing specifically about the resurrection as well as the didache. The Gentile Christians like to view Jesus as having died for their sins, resurrected for their justification, and they share this by participating in the Christian mysteries, the sacraments. Let's see what he delivers when we apply it to Peter. Gerd Ludemann argues that Peter's denial of Jesus and his flight away from Jerusalem left him with unresolved issues, unresolved feelings of guilt, unsuccessful mourning. Seeing Jesus resolves his inner conflict and supplies him with a new zest of life. He returns to Jerusalem and becomes one of the pillars of the Jewish community. Maybe there is more to it. The contagious effect of this experience allowed the believers to contrast Jesus with Caesar and to establish an alternative community to the empire, which is characterized by love, by empathy, by inclusion, by diversity. I'd like to end my talk by referring to a little poem which was written by Yehudi Ben Amikar on the place where we are right. Flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mow or plough, and a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. And with this I conclude, confessing my own doubts and uncertainties. Thank you.